Tom Campbell here. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our Patreon account or through a one-time donation. The links are in the description below. Thank you and enjoy the video.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the 85th My Big Toe Fireside Chat featuring Tom Campbell. My name is Adam Hashian, and I'm your host for today. And here at the Fireside Chat, we like to keep discussions to a general nature so it can reach the most people. But don't let that prevent you from asking something that is personal and important to you. As always, I encourage everyone here today to participate however you feel like. If you have any comments or questions that pop up during the discussion, you can put them in the chat, and I'll be sure to prioritize those and get to them. And for all the viewers on YouTube, if you want to join us on a future Fireside Chat, just reach out to MBT Events or leave a comment to this video, and it's a completely open forum, and we would love to have you. So, without further ado, let's get into our first topic for today, which is fear. We have a few questions revolving around the topic of fear, and I think that's a pretty important one, so we're going to get right into it. The first one I'm going to ask is from Armin, and he asks, what do people get stuck on most when getting rid of their fears?
Well, the two things they run into that are the two biggest problems with getting rid of fears is one, your ego, because the ego's job is basically to whitewash the fear, to make the fear not look so frightening, to actually deny that the fear even exists. That's what your ego's job is to say, what fear? You don't have any fear. You don't feel inadequate. You're the best person on the planet, and you're this, and you're great, and you're wonderful. And your ego tries to tell you that you don't have fear. And the second thing is your beliefs. Your beliefs are often the source of your fear. You believe that people won't like you. You believe that you're not adequate. You believe lots of things, and it's those beliefs that are harder to let go of. So letting go of the beliefs and catching that ego that's always making excuses and always justifying whatever it is, you want to do, those are the two things that make it difficult to let go of fear. If it were all an intellectual process, it would be easy. If you could say, oh, okay, I'll just write my fears down and here's number one and I'll get rid of it and then I'll get rid of number two. But it has very little to do with your intellect. Your intellect is just the director, I guess, that points you out and says, you should get rid of your fears. That may be your intellect, tells you that. But then getting rid of them has to happen at the intuitive level or the being level. You can get your intellect to tell you 1,000 times that you need to get rid of your fears, but nothing will happen if you don't make changes down at the being level, at the core of you. The intellect can come to all kinds of great conclusions, but if they don't actually get deeper than the intellect, then nothing happens. If anything happens, it's acting. You start acting better, acting less out of your fears. You start behaving in ways that keep your fear hidden. What all that means is you're putting on an illusion. You have a persona that's not really you, is what you go through life with. And that image, no matter how sweet and nice that image is, it's not going to help you grow up much or help you get rid of that fear at all. It's just going to help you get by. You sneak by the fear with that image, but you don't get rid of it. And what happens is that image begins to wear out. The older you get, the more that image starts to wear out and those fears start to push their way back up to the surface. So while you're a teenager and in your 20s and 30s, you kind of have those fears buried and you hardly ever notice them because they're just buried deep and life is busy and you just get by with your image. But as you get older and then older still, it's harder and harder to carry on that image and the real you starts to pop out here and there. And it gets harder to stuff it back, under the bed or wherever it is you hide it. That gets harder than harder. And pretty soon you're becoming more and more authentic, which means actually being exactly who and how you are, but it's not working very well for you. That authentic you, is full of fear. And it has trouble getting along, has trouble dealing with people, has trouble with relationships, has all sorts of trouble. And you can't keep it tamed. You can't keep it on a leash anymore. So it doesn't get better. If you don't deal with that fear, when you're younger, it'll be harder to deal with it when you're older. So I would suggest you work on it right now. There's no time like right now to start working on that fear. You're not going to get to a time that it's going to be any easier for you than it is right now. And a lot of people who bottle things up, override them with their image, they find themselves getting a little obsessed with what they've been covering up. So you wonder why it is that, we hear things all the time in the news about some, priest or some other person who's molesting a child and you find out that the guy's 60 years old and you're thinking 60 years old, that sexual pressure, that sexual drive at 60 years old ought to be calmed down enough that he shouldn't have to do those things. Why is it that he gets all the way through his 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and at 60, he starts acting out? That's because those things are just harder and harder to keep under wraps. The older you get, you become more authentic. No time like now for grabbing hold of your fears and getting rid of them. They really won't get any easier and they'll get harder and harder. So those are the two things that make fear harder to get rid of, the ego and the beliefs. And you'd think that would be a simple thing to fix. Oh, I'll just change my beliefs. But these beliefs are deeply held, probably since you were a very small child is where they came from. They maybe even have come from another lifetime. Who knows? That's less likely, but possible. So they're very deep things. And unless you really put effort into it, unless you really focus on it and you really want to do it, and you think about it, and every time your mouth opens, you're thinking about, am I expressing that fear? Am I choosing out of fear? And if so, you stop yourself and say, I don't want to be that way. So that's how you finally get it. But you have to get that serious about it, that you put that attention on it all the time. Then you can make some progress. But as long as it's like, well, it doesn't bite too bad and I'm getting along all right and my image is pretty good. People tend to like my image and I'm not feeling too pushed yet. Then you tend to put it off and say, well, yeah, another day. I won't work on it too hard now. We'll do that later. And that's a bad way to approach getting rid of fear.
He also asked, what's the most effective way to get rid of your fear, and especially in a short period of time? Is there any trick to it, or is it just like you said, keeping it in your mind the entire time?
Yeah, I think the best way is to just have a very strong intent to be successful, to get rid of it. Not just to pretend to get rid of it, not just to have better behavior, but to get rid of it. And if that intent is strong enough, then you will naturally do everything that's right that will optimize your ability to get rid of it. In other words, if you have that as your intent, then you will think of the right things, to do or not to do when the time comes. So everything else will work. The thing that gets in the way is just like getting rid of any ingrained habit, like people who smoke. And they say, well, I really shouldn't smoke. It's not good for my health. Other people don't like it. I should quit. But they don't. Or maybe they quit for a week, and then they start up again. They just don't, and they've been saying that for like the last 20 years, I really should quit, but they just don't. Well, it's the same way with the fear. You have to really want to. That's somebody who thinks they should give up smoking, but doesn't really want to. And there's a lot of people are like that with their fears. They think they should get rid of their fears, but at a deeper level, that's difficult. That's hard. They have to face things that are uncomfortable. And well, that's better done another day when you're feeling a little stronger and better. And you always can come up with an excuse why tomorrow is a better day to do that than today. And eventually time goes on and you just don't do it. So that commitment to do it is probably the key thing. Now, some people have immediate success by going back and understanding their fear. If they go back and they say, where did I first start this? Where did I first have this fear? And where does it come from? Sometimes they'll be able to go back to a point and they'll say, oh, I see, that's when I felt inadequate, when mom didn't give me the teddy bear and my brother and sister each got one. And then they say, well, that's ridiculous. I'm 50 years old now. I should be able to let that go. That happened when I was, 6 years old. And they can just let go of it more easily then, because instead of this fear being a monster with sharp teeth, it's something silly out of their childhood. So sometimes that works quickly, but sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes you can't find the source. Sometimes you don't want to see the source. It's almost impossible to get you to go and look at that source. So it doesn't work for everyone. But if you're one of those it does work for, then you might want to try to say, just what is this fear? Why do I have this fear? Where does it come from? And that may give you some confidence, realizing, oh, it's not because I'm defective. It's because this happened sometime in my past. And then that's a lot easier thing to deal with in a sense of I'm defective. So for that, that might be the quick way for some people, but for most people, the only way that works is to really just seriously want to and mean that to the point that you won't accept anything else.
Well, all right. That's pretty intense. I mean, you really got to want it if you want to get rid of those fears. It can't just be fake, huh? It can't just be, what's it called? Lip service, right?
No, that won't work.
Okay, Cheryl, you had a question about fear. Do you want to ask yours?
Sure. Hello, Tom. You already answered parts of it. I think you read it. So I'm not going to read all of it. But my question was around, I'm getting closer to 60, so I can't push them down anymore. And they're all coming up. And on this one that I was writing about, it was, I was having a very difficult time finding it, because for me, if I can get to the root to it and find where the root is, I can pretty much pull it out by the root. That's been successful for me. Otherwise, it's like I'm just swiping at the leaves on the tree and then it pops up somewhere else. Then it doesn't make sense because it's in a different form and I don't recognize it, but I know it's there. And so it's just like a whack-a-mole. Which way are we going with this? And with this fear, I was having that same problem. And then all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, this is something invisible and I am pushing this down, way down. And it was fear of sadness and disappointment. And as I worked through it, I went, oh, wait a minute. Did my fear of sadness and disappointment help initiate all these things that happen, like the dog bite? Because sadness and disappointment. Well, if I'm going to go do something fun with my family or something like that, well, that has a potential for getting sad and getting disappointed because something could happen. Well, I think I was making it happen so that I could it was either it was self-fulfilling prophecy because I had the fear, it was just happening. And all these crazy things were happening. The plane's falling out of the air and I hurt my neck. And so I was at the cruise I was on, I was in the cabin the whole time because I was hurt. So it was just all these things was happening and it was multiplying and getting bigger. So I was wondering, wow, did I create all of that stuff out of that fear? And not being able to see it because it's a fear of an emotion. It wasn't like a specific, like the fear of a big dog. That was easy to tell. I'd see a big dog get scared. Okay, it's the big dog. So I was able to get to that route. But on this one, I really struggled for a while with this one until I was just driving down the road and it just came to me. It was just, this is sadness. I'm feeling it. I'm afraid of this sadness. And I hung on to that paper tiger until I could figure out what it was so I could rip it up. And I'm in that process now. But, can you speak about, the fear of emotions and repressed emotions, or maybe some tips to locate these in the while your mind is hiding them from you?
Sure. It's not so much really that the emotion that you fear. It's just that the emotion, the negative emotion, of course, is a downer. That's not a happy time. That's a down time. And then once you realize that the interaction you have with people is not just, it's mostly about you. It's not so much about them as it is about you with your interaction. I mean, as far as your feelings go, they come out of yourself. Nobody else makes you feel this way or that way. You have that feeling inside. And typically, if we think that something negative is going to happen, if I go there and, something negative will happen, then that will be terrible. So what we're doing is we're coming to a belief that something negative is going to happen. And then we react to that belief. Oh, something negative is going to happen. Oh, no. So we create the fearful belief because we don't want the bad thing to happen and we're afraid that it will. So we react to it as if it did. And even if it never happens, you're still pushed by a fear. Mm-hmm. So it's part of that is the fear of the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. Instead of living gracefully with uncertainty and saying, well, I'll just go interact with those people and see what happens. So that's living gracefully with uncertainty. You don't know, but you'll just go find out. You have the courage to just find out how it is. Okay, that's one thing. So part of it's the fear of the unknown. And the other is that you are not in control. And you realize that you're not in control. And if you're not in control, then you can't keep that negative thing from happening if it happens. If that negative thing happens, then there's nothing you can do about it. And that's a bother because you want life to be the way you want it to be. And it's not. And there isn't anything you can do about it because you're not in control. You're not the master of the universe. And that's a sad thought all by itself. I'm not the master of the universe. How sad. So it's all those things together. It's a sense of needing other people to be the way you want them to be, realizing they're not. And then rather than just accepting that, well, okay, they're not. I need to deal with them however they are. And I need to deal positively with them however they are. Instead of going that route, it's, oh no, I'm not in control. They're going to be however they are, and I'm not going to like it, and it's going to be a problem. And then basically you turn it into a problem before it even happens. And then when you go there, basically the chip's sitting on your shoulder. I know there's going to be a problem. Just knock this thing off and we'll see. You come there already loaded for bear when you show up. And then you will find what you're looking for. If you're expecting negativity, you will find negativity because your attitude of expecting negativity will create the negativity, whether it was going to happen before or not. So yes, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We find what we expect most of the time. And if it isn't actually there, we make it up anyway. We create it because that's the drama that we're in. We have this relationship with whoever it is, maybe somebody in our family or maybe the next door neighbor. And it's kind of a negative drama. And we set ourselves up for that being negative. And even if we go there and it's not negative, we'll make it negative or we'll interpret it to be negative. So rather than trying to change your environment and the people that are in your environment, change yourself so that you can deal with all those people, no matter how they are. You can deal with them in a positive way. And part of the attitude has to be, it's not that those people are wrong and negative and have a problem and they damn well need to fix it. It's those people are just who they are. They're also struggling with their lessons. They also struggling with their fears. And for the most part, they're doing the best they can with what they came in with. And that's about all they can do. So now you should think of, well, what can I do to not be part of their problem? If what they do is they tend to argue all the time, then what can I do to not be part of that argument? Well, you can just listen and not argue. Even if you feel that you'd like to argue because they're wrong and they need to be told that they're wrong, just keep it to yourself. Let them be however they are. Say, well, okay, that's the way they are. And I'll change the subject or I'll just listen and I'm going to be positive no matter what they say. Even if they say something rude to me, I'm just going to be positive about it because that's them. They're unhappy and I should have some compassion for that and let them be. See, so if you change that attitude toward the people, then everything will work out better. But as long as that attitude is, oh, those people, they've got problems and I'm going to go there and then I'm going to interact with them, then we're going to have problems and it just isn't going to be pleasant. And pretty soon you've worked yourself up into being angry and a tizzy before anything happens. That guarantees that the worst will happen, every time. So that's sort of what's going on, Cheryl. And it's good that you've kind of gotten as far through it as you have and starting to see it. And, once you understand it fully, you have a pretty good record of grabbing it by the roots and tearing it out. You've done a lot. So you'll probably get this one too.
Thank you so much for that. And I have just one little thing with that. The actual interactions with my family, when I do go, they have been wonderful. I have not been destroying all that like I used to. Those have been much, much better because that's my rule and my intention before I even leave my house. This is not about me. This is about my family and enjoying our time together. And I've done much better in the actual interactions, making it about them. They still do what they do, but I'm just peaceful and calm and just watching the thing like a circus. So it's been much, much better. It's been before I go, and then things are happening at my house before I even get out the door, because it's glitching there. So I'll get through this one too. But the actual events, those have been going really good and have been really kind and loving places for a bit now. So it's getting better. And thank you so much for this last piece. I think this is one of the last pieces. Once I get this one, I want the world to be just a happy place, Tom. I just want it so bad, but it's just not that sometimes.
No, it's just not. And you have to let it be however it is.
I do.
You can't go out there and make all those square pegs round and all the round pegs square so they fit into your world more nicely. You just can't do it. You have to say those people are who and what they are, and I need to deal with them positively however they are, why ever they're that way. I don't need to fix them. I don't need to help them. I don't need to point out to them, what they're doing wrong, because none of that will help. So you just have to say that's them, and If they're a part of your life for some reason, they're related to you, or they're, your significant other, or you have to work with them or whatever, if they're a part of your life, then you need to figure out how can you interact with them positively and not just act better, but actually be able to be there and not be negative. If you just stuff it, down and say, oh, I'm just going to smile and keep my mouth shut and I'm not going to react, well, that's nice. It'll make everything more civil, but it's not going to help you grow up. You actually have to be there, accept that they are the way they are, and you can't force change upon them. And you can't instruct them because that'll just push them in the opposite direction. So you might as well just let them be and be positive with it. Not through gritted teeth, but really just be positive.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for all you do. And I love you more than frog toes and rocks.
All right, Tom, we're going to switch gears here. We're going to change topics. We're going to be talking now about out-of-body experiences, a couple questions about Tom's Park. And the first one is going to be Will T, and he would like to read his own question. Will, are you ready?
Yeah. Hi, Tom. How you doing?
Good, Will. How about you?
I'm good. I'm busy, but good. Busy's good. I had a question for you. So I'm still able to getting out every day, 2-3 hours. But I have a wicked difficult time changing reality frames. And so I'll go out with an intent and I'll say, oh, I'm going to go to whatever, Cassock Records. Okay. And I'll close my eyes and turn around. I'll think about it, concentrate on it. I'm going to go. Sometimes I can go and I just go like that. But there's other times where I just cannot seem to change reality frames. And I was wondering if you had any kind of tips or ideas or techniques or just something,
Yeah. Well, the first tip I would have is don't try too hard, because the harder you try, the less likely it is to happen. That trying comes from the intellect. It's that intellect that says, all right, I'm going to do this now. And the more you get ready to do it now, the less likely it is that it's going to happen now. It's those times when you just go, oh, this would kind of be nice. All right. It's there. You're not really trying. It just happens kind of naturally. Those are the ones that are the easier times. But the advice I'd give is you're making it too hard. You have this big transition that you're getting over, which is the transition from here to there. And that's like black and white, one or a zero. You're either here or you're there. And it's this big transition point. And you can't keep your intellect from wanting to take charge of it, because you're an intellectual guy. You're a smart guy. You live out of your brain. That's how you make a living, is because you use your intellect all the time. And that intellect just wants to take charge. It just wants to do it. It wants to know what's the right technique. What do I do to get out of body? And there's nothing that you do to get out of body. It's just a matter of the way you are. It's a being thing, not a doing thing. And the more you try to turn it into a doing thing, the more frustrated you get with it. And I don't know if you've heard of the Tom's Park idea, but that's an idea that gets rid of the transition, the stark transition between a 1 and a 0, here or there. It lets that transition, instead of being a single point switch, which is really hard for the intellect to take, because the intellect wants to manage that, wants to be aware of it, wants to test it, wants to know that it really happened. The intellect is on that. And it's hard to get the intellect to get through that transition without it butting in and basically, ending your experience. So in those times when you really want to and it doesn't seem to work, just go there in your imagination. Just imagine that you're there. Okay, you've been out of body before. You know what it feels like. You know what it's, what's there. So it's part of your experience base. if it's part of your experience base, you ought to be able to imagine it pretty well. So just imagine it. So I'm just going to imagine now that I'm where I was last time when I was out of body. I'm going to go back and do that again, or talk to those people again, or go to that place again, and just imagine it. Now, your intellect is going to want to keep butting in and saying, you're just making this up. You're just imagining it. You're not really out. And you see, you just have to say, stand down, intellect, I'm just going to have this experience. If it turns out to be a daydream instead of an out of body, that's okay. I'm going to have the daydream. So leave me alone until I'm done. And then we can discuss it later as to how significant it was. What did I learn? How did it help me grow or understand things better? Was it good practice? So just let your imagination do it, because what typically will happen is if you can just agree to have the experience, no matter where it comes from, if you can accept that, which means your intellect accept that, then usually there's no problem. Because as soon as you let go, you'll start getting a data stream that you're not making up, that's outside of you, that'll pick up right from where your daydream is. So you can't tell the difference. You'll start a daydream going someplace, and it'll start to feed data that is part of that daydream and lead you right off into an out of body. But if your intellect says, well, where's the data coming from? Is this coming from me? And if it jumps in, that may trash the experience. But if you can just let a little sliver of it, be aware that you're no longer making up all sides of it. When you're in a daydream that you're making it up, let's say you're having a conversation with your best friend in this daydream. Well, you're making up what you say, and you're making up what they say, and then you're making up how you're answering what they say, and then you're making up their reaction to your reaction, and you're making up all sides. And you're aware of that because it takes a little effort to make all those parts up. And what you'll find is that you start like that in a daydream, but very quickly, and when I say very quickly, usually in 10 seconds or less, very quickly, that just stops. Your effort of playing all the parts just kind of gets less and less and less, because it's a lot of work. And pretty soon you realize that that person's reacting to you saying things that you never would have had them say if you had to make it up. It's stuff that's outside of you. It's not you anymore. And it just flows naturally. It's the same idea that I kind of, solidified into the Tom's Park. Just start with your imagination wheel and let it go. And to get your intellect to be quiet, just tell your intellect, it doesn't matter, daydream or not. I'm going to go have this experience and I can learn things from it. You can learn from daydreams. A daydream is not just a wasted thing. It's still experience. You still make choices, and you can still learn from examining and fleshing out those choices. So a daydream is not a useless thing to have. Can be a valuable thing to have. So just say, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to have the experience and go off and have it. And I suspect that within 10 seconds of your daydream starting, you'll be out of body. And it won't be any effort at all. It'll just be a natural transition that you never even noticed when it happened.
I'm betting that that's the same way to parallel process. It's probably the same thing, just on a more conscious level. I think that would be the same same techniques. Sure.
Yeah, you can. It's the same technique. Basically, what that does is it gives the system a connection point to you. You see, it's that connection point is the big transition issue. Here I am. Now I want another data stream. All right, how do I get this data stream? How do I connect to that data stream? How does the system start sending me stuff when I'm here? You see, so it's like you somehow snap, you want to be someplace else. Another data stream. I drop this one, I grab another one, and bingo, it happens. Well, because it all boils down to one moment, one fraction of a second, it's hard for the intellect to let go of that process. But when it's something that you start, and it just kind of slides into something else. You know, there's no big transition point, because you could be 10% you're making it up and 90% is a data stream, or the other way around. You may be 90% making it up and it's 10% a data stream, and that can change. It can be more of the data stream, less of you, more of you, less of the data stream. That can come and go. So after a while, you stop trying to tell the difference, because it's really hard to tell the difference until you get into it. You can't tell the difference immediately. You only are aware of the difference later. But you never get to later if you keep interrupting it and saying, am I doing it yet? You never get to later. So just use your imagination and slide into it very gradually, and don't try to pinpoint the change. And if it turns out that the whole thing was a daydream, well, that's okay. You probably learned something valuable from it. That's real choices and real, it's information. Your consciousness, you can create information. So if you're the source of that data stream, you're creating it. We call that a daydream. But we in our culture tend to throw that out and say, well, that's trash. That's meaningless. It's not trash, and it's not meaningless. And if what you really intend is to have a data stream external to you, which is what we call an out of body, then that's what'll happen. The system will do that, and it'll pick up and mimic that daydream so precisely that you won't know how much of you and how much is it. And then you stop worrying about it, and then you're there. So give that a try.
That actually leads to my next question, which was, so I wanted to talk to you about the relationship with the intellect and OB. Okay. So when I'm going out of body, and I go out of body and I have like these plans, I have a mission, I'm going to go and heal this person, or I'm going to go over there and look at the Eiffel Tower. It doesn't matter. Right. And so anyway, so I have this mission, and then, invariably when I get out there, it's like, I'm not remotely interested in doing whatever my mission was. And I'm like, and I'm aware of it. I know that I had a mission. I know I was supposed to go over here. And I'm like, I'm going to stick with this thing that is much more interesting, that's right in front of me. I don't know if it's low-bearing fruit or if it's what I'm supposed to be doing in the system that's giving me but my question is that, okay, so I want to, on a conscious level, when I'm talking to you, I want to have more intellectual input into my out-of-body experiences, because I feel like there's times when I get out of an OB and then I'm like, oh man, if I had just done this, or if I had just thought of that, which is a lot of time, those readily obvious ideas are from the intellect. But then I'm also thinking that if me on the being level doesn't really want to do that, then is it really just my ego that's trying to interject the intellect into my out-of-body experience so that my ego can start to control the out-of-body experience? Or is it really like beneficial? Because if it was really beneficial, then wouldn't I want to do it on the being level when I actually got out of body, which I don't. So I was wondering if you want to weigh in on like this conundrum that I found myself in.
Sure. I've experienced all of that, when I was in the same spot you are now, and I was learning, and I ran through all those same questions. But one way to solve that is to have your intellect decide, it wants to do certain things, and it lays plans and what it wants to do, and make a deal with yourself, with your intellect. Say, all right, I'm going to do that first. I'm going to work on those things first. But after a while, after I get those done, they're gonna have an end to them. That task isn't like a task that's endless, that just keeps going on forever. I'm gonna have an end to it. I'm gonna find these things. These are my goals. And when I do my goals, then I'm done. And then I'm gonna do whatever I want to do. So you break it into pieces so that you can do both. And then when you get there, and see the differences between your intellectual side and your intuitive side. Your intellectual side lays plans, has things to do, wants to accomplish stuff. On your intuitive side, it doesn't want to do any of that stuff. It doesn't have plans. It just is. It just experiences. It doesn't have any goals. It doesn't have anything it needs to do. It just wants to experience. So it's when you're in those two different frames, you have two different attitudes toward things. And what you're doing is you're having your intellectual attitude, then you go over there and you're getting your intuition, your being level side, and all of that I want to do this, I want to do that, just disappears because you don't really care that much about this or that. You just want to experience and explore and whatever, feels right at the time. But make a deal and say, I do want to do these things because I'm learning, and these will help me, understand what's going on if I do these things. So I'm going to work on them. So then you need some discipline that you take with you. You can discipline that intuitive side a bit. And when you get there, you can say, all right, I know I need to do those, and I'm going to do them first. And as soon as I'm done with them, I'm going to go play. And then do them. Do them until you're done. And you'll probably have a tendency to rush through them because you'll be anxious to go play. But you'll do them. And the more you do this, the easier it'll be to split yourself into the work and the play. So think about your 3 and 4 and 5 and 6-year-old kids that you've known, whether they're yours or somebody else's. And you have work for them to do, but they'd like to go play. It's the same thing. You see, children tend to live in that intuitive side. And you give them chores. Oh, before you go out and play, you have to do your homework, you have to make your bed, you have to straighten up your room, you have to clean up your toys, you have all these things to do. And you see just the look on their face. They go, sure, okay, I'll do that. And it lasts about 30 seconds, and they're gone, They're playing with their clothes. They're playing with their toys rather than picking them up because they tend to be pretty straightforward and honest and live out of their intuitive sides a lot more than they live out of their intellects at that age. So that's what you're doing. You're acting like a 5-year-old that your intellect has told you, now you need to go do these things. And you're going, sure, okay, I'll do those. And then as soon as daddy isn't looking, you go, pull the toy box out from under the bed and go and want to go play. So that's just a natural, intuitive way of being. That's a good way to be. You're being authentic. You're being natural. You don't want to organize and do stuff, but sometimes in life we have to organize and we have to get things done. That's important. So make a deal. Do both. There's a time to play and a time to get your chores done. So I think that will probably work. But it's the natural state of the intellect. It's goal-oriented, and the natural state of the intuition is just to experience. It's more play-oriented. And you can't help that. That's just the nature of those two sides. But you can discipline both. Just like you can get your intellect to lighten up sometimes and smell the roses. You can get your intuitive side to buckle down and get the work done. It just takes a little practice.
That was really helpful. Thank you, Tom.
I'm going to combine a few questions here. They both deal with the nature of experience in Tom's Park. Guillaume had one from last time that didn't quite get asked, and he was talking about how he's not very visual in his experience, his imagination. He has more feelings, or he is more left-brained, as he likes to say. He has more intellect in words and dialogue. And he's wondering if he has the kind of lack of motivation to get into Tom's Park because he feels that it might take too much time for someone like him who doesn't have very vivid visual experiences And no worries, Guillaume, I'm the same way. I don't have very vivid visual information come to me as well either. So no worries, you're not alone. And he's wondering, are people who are more visual intuitive, or are they more intuitive? And can you speak on the nature of the difference between the kinds of information you can get from Tom's Park, whether they be visual or feeling or other sensory data? And I think Will had some experience where he witnessed or went to Tom's Park and he saw a bunch of eggshells in the pool, and he said it looked very dirty to him. He was wondering if that specific experience was that true? Was he actually at Tom's Park? What did that experience mean? So I'm kind of grouping the two together about, the nature of experience within Tom's Park and the kind of information you get from the intuitive side.
Well, I would also say, Adam, that
Yep.
I didn't think that, and it's not whether it was true, but whether or not the system was sending me some feedback and telling me that maybe I shouldn't spend my time at Tom's Park and it has better things for me to do, or maybe it wasn't Tom's Park and I just thought it was Tom's Park, or maybe it meant something else and it was just a visual cue. So that I was just trying to get some input on that.
Okay. Guillaume, did I get the essence of your question?
Yeah. I think
Yes,
I got
of
it.
course. Of course. Maybe I will add another little small question after Tom's responding. Thanks.
Sure, great.
Okay. You can feel your way through Tom's Park or anything else rather than see your way through it. All those things that you have to do there, even if it's riding a jet ski, you don't have to see it. You can just feel it. So some people don't do visuals very well. And there's several reasons for that. It could be their visual cortex isn't as well developed for some reason. It's just the nature of the way they happen to be. Everybody's a little different. So yes, we all have visual cortexes, but they don't all work exactly the same way. So it may be just something like that that's organic. On the other hand, sometimes people don't get visuals because the visuals are more, what should I say? They have a higher, bandwidth requirement, and they kind of stay away from the high bandwidth stuff. The feelings are a lower bandwidth, and it's just easier to process in the feeling space. It takes a lot of data to process video as opposed to process audio or feelings. So sometimes that is the issue. But I think you can feel your way through it. You don't have to see it. Let's say you sit down on a bench and a chipmunk's going to come up and sit on the top of the bench with you and going to start a conversation. Well, you don't have to see that. You can just participate, do it. Don't worry about the visuals. Let that all just take care of itself. Don't worry about, well, am I getting the audio? Well, you're going to get the audio, from mind to mind, not necessarily through the ears. So the audio is just going to come through consciousness. And, the idea of what's going on, that there is a chipmunk there, that you are sitting on a bench, that you can just get the feel of it. What is that like? And I don't mean that you feel it like, oh, I can feel my feet on the pavement and my backside on the bench and the back of the bench on my back. It's not that kind of a feeling, but you just feel the process of what's going on. Let it be general. Don't look for high res. Low res is fine. As a matter of fact, it can be so low res that there really isn't any pictures, but you're feeling it anyway. This is what the people who kind of live in feeling space as opposed to the visual space do. And I've had people who will tell me, that they don't visualize, they don't get any pictures. But what they felt was that there was a red convertible parked in front of the firehouse, and it had 3 people in it. And And it's like, wait a minute, how do you feel, the color red? How do you feel, that it's a convertible and not a hardtop? But they say, no, I don't see anything, I just feel that. Well, those are the kind of feelings that I'm talking about. You can feel all sorts of things. And if you are convinced that you don't do visuals well, then you can get all the same information, but not have it come under the heading visuals, and it'll work just fine. So part of that is a belief that you don't do visuals very well. Some of it may be a fact that you don't do visuals very well. That may be part of your organic, part of your avatar, but that's all right. You can do the feeling space can be very rich and full of lots of information. And as long as your intellect doesn't get in here and say, yeah, but I never really saw the chipmunk. I just talked to it and it was sitting on, here and it hopped onto my shoulder. And well, if you feel all those things, it's just in your data stream. You're just not interpreting that data in terms of sight. You're interpreting it in some other way, some nebulous way that's sort of like sight and sort of like feeling and sort of like neither one, but you're getting all the information just the same. And that seems to work for a lot of people. So don't worry too much about how you get it, but you can experience it however it is that comes natural to you. Sometimes the fact that you prefer a low bandwidth is because you don't want to be distracted by the pretty pictures. You get too engrossed in the pretty pictures. Oh, look at that, and then you want to zoom in and see all the detail, and pretty soon you've kind of lost what you're supposed to be doing. And it's really better to keep not high res, but just get the sense of it, know it, without seeing it, without hearing it. Remember, this is all happening in consciousness. It doesn't require eyes or ears. You just interpret things in terms of seeing and hearing because you don't know how any other way to interpret. That's just the way you've learned to interpret the data in terms of your senses. But you can feel things, you can smell things, you can hear things, you can see things out of body. You just have to interpret the data in that way. Now, if you have a kind of a thing in your mind and your consciousness that you don't want to do high-res visuals, that's okay. Do it some other way. But it doesn't have to be limited just to the way you sense things here. Like, I don't clearly see things and I don't clearly, feel things, because feeling's kind of a low bandwidth, sort of thing. It's neither of those. It's just something else. I just know what's going on. I know there's a chipmunk there. Don't ask me how that I know, because I don't think I actually see it, but I can tell it. I feel it on my shoulder. I can smell it, whatever. So you're trying too hard to turn it into sense data. It's not really. It's just a knowing that you'll get that it's there. But if you don't, if you feel inadequate with like I really want to see it and I want it to be clear, well, that's your intellect wanting more clarity to prove to yourself that it's really there. Or it's, you having an expectation of the way it's going to be. Oh, it's going to be in 3D, very crisp, 4K, maybe even 8K, video, and that's going to be awesome. And you have this expectation, and then you're disappointed because you don't get that. Well, it's not really necessarily seeing or hearing or feeling or smelling or touching. Or tasting. You just know what's going on. You're just aware of things. Go enjoy it. Go connect with it. However it comes to you and however you translate it, that's good enough. That's all right. Play with whatever it is you get. And as you go back and go back and go back again to Tom's part, it will get easier and easier to translate. And the translations will become more and more rich with time. That's just practice. You have to practice that however it is you translate it. has to be practiced. That's why I try to encourage people that when you go to Tom's Park, smell, hear, taste, do everything. Try to make it as rich as possible. Everybody won't be able to do that very well, but they'll get bits and pieces of it. But do whatever you can do and add little bits and pieces to it. All right, you've just been doing some things and you don't know really whether you see them or feel them or how you're getting them, but you're getting something. Just deal with that. And it will get richer over time if you have an intention for it to get richer. Okay, now I've talked to that chipmunk, 4 or 5 times now. Next time, I want to really look at it. I want to see those little white stripes, going down its back, and I want to look into its eyes and look at the color. I want to do that, and then maybe you'll get some visuals, and maybe that'll make it richer for you. Or maybe then after you get the visuals, you'll say, it really doesn't matter. Seeing the stripes isn't all that important to what's going on here and what's really important to me. I don't need all that excess data. I only need the stuff that, I'm relating to, and the rest of it isn't really that important. So that'll be an important lesson. That would be a very successful time that you learn a lesson like that. So in any case, just work with it. Don't feel like you're missing something if you don't have, 4K or 8K visuals. That's not the only way to translate stuff. And translating into that much detail is probably a lot of work for very little gain. For the most part, it doesn't matter what the chipmunk looks like. That's not what's important. It's the conversation you have. It's the interaction. It's the connection. It's that the chipmunk exists at all. The details aren't important. So that's up to you. The system will kind of give you what you want, what you need. But to begin with, it often doesn't give you any more than is necessary. And it's not necessary to see all the individual hairs on the chipmunk's back. You'd see that in 4K, but it's not really necessary for what it is you're trying to get out of it. You see, so the system doesn't necessarily give you that. Again, you have to understand, going out of body is not like going to Chicago. It's not that thing. It's not the physical world. This is information that you're getting, and you get as much of the information as you need to take the next step. You don't always get just all the information just because it's there. What's important is how you connect to things, that you do interact, that you do get involved in your daydream, that you get involved in your experiences. And the more you get involved in it, whether you actually see anything clearly or not, is irrelevant. Then that getting involved in it puts you into your intuitive space. And once you're in that intuitive space and you've done it enough times that you feel solid in that intuitive space, then you can go do whatever you want. Now you're free. Your intention will set the stage for whatever happens after that. It's between you and the LCS, what happens after that. So getting to that intuitive space is the key, not seeing really clear pictures.
I guess that expectations comes from past psychedelic experience, like high dose of drugs, and seeing like a stream of consciousness in really high definition, like watching a TV or a really good 3D set, So I guess that expectation comes from those past experience.
Yeah, and you can have that experience in and out of body. I've been in out of bodies where what I see is the colors are deeper and brighter. There's more colors, it seems. Everything is brighter. You come back to this reality, and it's like you just went back to Dollsville. It's not nearly as visual as it was in the out of body, but they're not all like that. So you can get that if you want it. I get that often when I zoom in. You can zoom in on a flower, and then you can get inside the flower, and then you get into details, and you can get all the way down to molecular level if you like, and everything is in precise, high def. But most of the time, you don't need that. And that's not really very important. So the system doesn't give you stuff just to send you data. It sends you data to help you experience something that helps you learn and helps you grow. And you don't need to see a lot of details for that. You just kind of have to have the sense of what's going on. But yes, an expectation, you have that out of body where everything is super high def and the colors are fantastic. And then you want them all to be that way. Well, they're not, because you don't need that. And the system just doesn't send you lots of pretty colors just to entertain you. You're there to, to learn things and to open yourself up and to grow, not to be entertained. So that's just the way it is. You probably get it a couple of times just to let you know that it's there and it's possible there. But when you talk to somebody, if you have a real good conversation with your dead Uncle Fred, you're not in detail. You're not seeing Uncle Fred's pores, on his skin. You're not seeing, each individual hair on his head. You just have a sense that that's Uncle Fred you're talking to. And yes, it's got all the familiar sights and sounds and feel to it. And you kind of take that in, but you don't need the detail. It's just a waste of bandwidth. The system's very efficiency conscious. It doesn't want to send you much more than what you need in order to get done what you need to get done. And most of that occurs in a feeling space, which is what your intuitive side is good at, is that feeling space. And that's where most of that takes place. So it's like I say, it's not really feelings in the way we think of feelings as emotions, and it's not really visuals the way we think of visuals here. It's a combination of all those senses that you just get the picture and understanding, and you just know what's going on. And if you think, oh, I'm only getting part of a picture here, I'm not seeing everything clearly, then that's your intellect getting in the way and your expectations getting in the way. So maybe that helps.
Is there kind of a relation between the way people are thinking in their head? I mean, it seems that some people think with language, with words, and some people kind of think in picture, images, feelings, are more maybe intuitive or oriented in their way of thinking and going ahead. And some people are thinking more in word,
Sure.
phrase, precise word. So is there kind of relation with the kind of
Sure.
data stream you receive?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, the system will give you the information and you will translate it however is most natural for you to translate it. Some people are just very visual and they translate things visually. Gender-wise, there's a difference between males and females. Men tend to be more visual. Women tend to spend more time in feeling space. Men tend to spend more time in visual space. It's just it's just the way the virtual brain works, and that virtual brain sets the constraints on what the consciousness can do with that avatar. So if your avatar is such that it doesn't do visuals much, or at least that's not its main thing, then you will interpret that information some other way. And the visuals will just be enough to get by, but no more than that. So sure, it has to do with the way you with the way you translate the data. How do you take the data and make sense out of it? And any way you do that is good enough. You just shouldn't then start to fault yourself for not getting it the way other people get it. Oh, so-and-so gets all these pretty color pictures and I don't. Mine's not as good. Well, that's not necessarily true. Maybe theirs is not as good, or maybe it really doesn't compare. You shouldn't ask that question, comparing yourself to what other people get. You just get what you get, make as much as you can out of whatever you get and go on. So this idea that we compare what we get to what others get, and we want to have the same things they do, that's ego. that's not really useful.
And I will finish with that. What about some people that are really brilliant, intelligent people who add maybe the capabilities of kind of really have an inner feeling space, intuitive space with a lot of pictures and image, and a kind of that thinking space in words, and maybe that combination of the two maybe just put more data stream into making that person really creative and and being able to mix up intellect work with more creative work. You know what I mean by that?
Sure.
Like having the two of the best side.
Yeah. Well, you get what you need to learn what you have to learn. So it all works out. People just need to be pretty much happy with whatever it is they have and who they are and how they get things and deal with that. So, sure, people are very different in how they process information. And you can change that. If you really want to process more pictures, you just can work on it. Have your intention for it, and you can develop yourself to process more pictures. But it may not be your natural state. It kind of depends on your preferences. When you were 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, what did you focus on? Did you focus on the visuals, or did you focus on understanding the feelings? Well, you got better at one than the other just because that's what drew your attention. But that doesn't mean you can't develop the other. You can. You just need to put your focus on it and develop it. It's not going to develop instantly, but it'll take time. So if you want more visuals in Tom's Park, you just work at it and you will get them eventually. But you may have to work at it because that may not be your natural way of interpreting data. Because we all get pieces of all of it, right? We all get feelings, and we all get some pictures, and we all get bits and pieces of it all the time. It depends on what we focus on is what we tend to get most of. And then we kind of develop that more than we develop the other parts. And that's partly why we are very different. It's all not just that we come with genetics that are different, but it's also the way we approach our experience when we're very young, and it kind of leads us down one path instead of another.